Chainsaws are a specialized piece of equipment, so we're going to cover some tips and tricks to help you get the best out of your chainsaw hire and ensure that you use it safely to prevent injury. When you hire a chainsaw from Hirepool, you are required to read our instructions for use sheet, which can be found either on our website, attached to your contract, or by scanning the QR code on your equipment's green tag. So please take the time to read it and follow all the safety steps. If you're looking for information on how to start a chainsaw, this can be found in our How to Start a Chainsaw video. Before starting the chainsaw, there are a few safety devices you need to be familiar with. The throttle lock, which prevents throttle advance when pressed in, the chain catcher, which will catch the chain if it breaks or derails, the stop switch, which will immediately cut the engine, and the chain brake, which engages when force is applied, like kickback, to stop the chain from running. It's important to remember when the chainsaw is not in use, the chain brake should always be activated, including on startup, right up until your chainsaw is running, ready for use. When cutting with a chainsaw, you might encounter kickback. Kickback can occur if the upper quarter of the guide bar nose unintentionally comes in contact with wood or a solid object. It may cause the saw to fly back. Be aware there are different kickback zones on the bar. To avoid kickback, always keep a good grip on the chainsaw with both hands. The right hand should firmly grip the rear handle with a firm hold on the front handle using the left hand. When cutting with a chainsaw, it is important the only material that comes in contact with the chain is wood. However, this does not include pallets or building materials which can splinter. Before you start cutting, check the surface that you are working with is free of any unsafe materials. This means there's nothing wrapped around the tree, such as nails or chicken wire. We recommend you do not use a chainsaw to split firewood. Instead, use a log splitter. Avoid all dirt. As soon as the chainsaw chain while operating comes into contact with the ground, it blunts the chain very quickly. Once the chain is blunt, it needs to be sharpened or changed prior to cutting effectively again. This information can be found on our How to Change a Chain on a Chainsaw video. We suggest to help avoid this, engage the chain brake before setting the chainsaw on the ground to avoid the chain spinning and catching. To keep your chainsaw running smoothly, you should check your chain bar is being lubricated. The chain should always throw off a small amount of oil when started. Always top the chain oil tank when refueling the chainsaw. If the chain is not lubricated with the chain bar oil, it will become blunt very quickly and won't cut effectively. When refueling, always use 2-stroke fuel with our machines, which we supply at the time of hire. You should not attempt to run a chainsaw with regular fuel. Typically, you should not cut wood any bigger than 2 inches shorter than the bar length, unless being used by a professional. The most common chainsaw injuries to the thigh and left arm can be virtually eliminated with a few simple precautions. Always wrap the thumb of your left hand around the front handle while you're cutting. This grip keeps the saw under control in the event of kickback. When you move from place to place with the saw running, even if it's only to the next branch, activate the chain brake and carry the saw at your side, with your dominant hand holding the front handle. Or, alternatively, switch off the chainsaw to minimize further risk. Use the chainsaw starting position provided in your safety handbook. This can also be found on our How to Start a Chainsaw video. Ensure you have the correct safety gear, including head, ear, eye and hand protection, which can all be purchased from Hirepool. You can also hire chaps from Hirepool, which will save your thigh in the event of a slip. Wear steel-toed, cut-resistant boots and a long-sleeve shirt to protect against the inevitable scratches. In summary, here are the key tips and tricks for using a chainsaw. Before you operate the chainsaw, make sure you have read and understood the instructions for use sheet. Ensure you have familiarized yourself with the key safety devices on your saw: the throttle lock, chain catcher, chain brake and stop switch. Before operation, especially if you're new to using a saw, make sure you understand where the kickback zones are and how to avoid them. Check that you're holding the saw correctly before operation. Check that the area you're working in is clear of anything that isn't wood, for example, nails or chicken wire. Make sure you're only using 2-stroke fuel with the saw. Avoid having your chain bar come in contact with the dirt or ground at all times. Periodically check the fuel and oil to ensure it has not run dry. Make sure when you're walking with the chainsaw, the chain brake is activated and you have the correct grip to avoid any incidents. And lastly, make sure you have the correct safety gear on at all times. So there you go. There are some handy tips on how to correctly and safely use a chainsaw. If you'd like more information, our friendly Hirepool staff will be happy to answer any of your questions. Hirepool, the smarter hire.